So Tino is the CEO and president of Turknett Leadership Group, and he supports CEOs and their teams in building accountable and engaged cultures. And we're talking this morning a lot about that and the growth of support of folks that of leadership training, which is exciting to hear. He grew the Technology Association of Georgia from 500 to 36,000 members. That's pretty incredible. And for us, if you don't mind, we'll just take 500 members. How's that? You can help us, we'd appreciate it. And he's award-winning leadership of the Chicago YMCA. So, Tino, without any further ado, come on up and talk to us.
Okay, it's supposed to work. Let's see if it moves one. Oh, wow, that was good. So I know we have some people online. Jim, it was good to hear your story. It's been a long time since we've talked as well, but Jim's a great guy and we've connected over the years as well. I was saying to a few of you before, I've had some intersections with Netweavers in the past. In fact, after a 12-year stint with TAG, I hesitated because after year 11, the board wanted me to re-up for another 5 years. And I'm like, guys, 12 years is going to be plenty. So I'm not going to do that. But I want to go on my next journey and shorten up the story. But I actually was asked to make a presentation at Netweavers, and Lynn Turknett was in the audience. And Bob and Lynn Turknett, family-owned business, 35 years. And Bob had always kidded me because I knew him through the Atlanta Rotary. He said, well, when you're done with TAG, come and work for us. I'm like, yeah, that's good, Bob. Sure, someday I'll do that. And then the day after I presented at Netweavers, Lynn called me and said, no, I'm really serious. You should come in and work for us. So that was the beginning of the process where I actually ended up at the Turknett Leadership Group. So thanks to Netweavers for that. Michael Blake, who you all know, contacted me a few months ago, and Cordelia and I had talked, and he said, we'd like you to have someone, you or someone in your company, talk about remote work. And I guess it's my own upbringing. My mom and dad was like, you can do anything you put your mind to. That didn't always prove out to be the case, but it's good. It's a good thought process to go through that. So I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. And then I don't know who the comedian was. We remember a comedian used to do this, after. I'm like, why did I say I was going to do that? I'm not an expert in remote work. And what I've been doing since I talked to Michael and said I would do this is trying to learn a bit about what's happening with remote work. But I think everybody in here, and we have a small group and people online as well. So, I want this to be interactive. And I think just in listening to you at the beginning, we have a woman here. What's your name?
Kimberly.
Kimberly is working remote with her headquarters out of Pittsburgh. We have some people that have, well, let me show of hands. How many of you are working remote right now? So some of you, how many of you are running companies or involved with companies that have like a hybrid mix of, yeah, so pretty much people have hybrid mix, but nobody's really an expert on this because it's changing so fast, but everybody knows something about it. It's kind of like politics, I think, where everybody's got an opinion, what's going to happen, where we're going to be. And so I kind of picked some things together for the presentation with you, but it's not from an expert stance. It's from as much knowledge as I could gather, some reading. We also have at Turknett, we have 30 coaches who coach executives and people at different levels, high potentials. So I contacted a number of my coaches and I said, what are people saying that you're coaching? What's the stress points? What's the good points? Are they working remote or not? So some of the information I have is from what the coaches say. So I have that expertise. And then as I go around, it's not a hard conversation to start. And so I often say when I'm doing a lot of networking again now, if people know me from TAG, I was out like pretty much every night of the week. And so I'm doing more of that now again. And so I say, what's your stance on remote work? And what I've learned is the battle lines are drawn. There's really a Donnybrook going on, and everybody is trying to figure out where it's going to end up. But this is a little example from Eric Schmidt, who was past head of Google, as you know. So it's interesting that there's a contrast between the retiring person that was HR at Google and the past head of Google, where, you know, Eric Schmidt, he's the one quoted at the bottom, "Good riddance to work from home," Google former CEO says. And then his HR person says, yeah, it says your boss wants you to boil slowly like a frog to get back to work. And it will be terrible for morale and productivity. So there's this sense that it's going to happen. It's just happening slowly, like the story about the frog. You know, it's in lukewarm water and it'll just stay in there and eventually it'll die after being boiled alive. So, and I have a number of references to that. I'm going to give you some statistics. So, you know, the battle lines are to some degree between senior managers and the employee workforce, right? 66% of senior managers want their teams to work on site full time. That's according to Robert Half, where 50% of employees would look for a new job if required to be in the office full time. And I heard this quote a couple of days ago, and I don't know who it came from, but they said that 1 out of 2 employees, I don't know if anybody else has heard this, are considering leaving their job in 2022. 1 out of 2 employees are considering leaving their job in 2022. So it's one of the things to think about is no matter what the leadership, and I have a couple people to quote on this too, but no matter what the leadership thinks, right now the employees are ruling the roost, right? I don't know if people agree with that or not, but I see it all the time. And I have another little part-time thing that I'm doing. And we're, if there's a technology person, particularly, that feels like they can work anywhere and they're used to that, and somebody says, we have a job for you, we'll pay you $50,000 more. It's like, well, do you have to come into the office? It's like, yes. Okay, click. They're saying they want to work remote. They can work remote. What's the problem with that? And there's enough, and particularly in a market where there's basically zero unemployment, they have that opportunity to say no. Now, maybe in a different era, I don't think we're going to go into recession, but if we go into recession, maybe it will get back to a balance where the employer actually has something to say about what's going on. I don't know if you can read this slide or not, but the Connection Conundrum, and it just shows where there's been this process of before COVID. You see, the people that were exclusively remote, hybrid, and that were full-time in the office, and see how that's changed over the years. On the right, you can't really necessarily read that, but on the 96%, I thought that was an interesting statistic. 96% of managers feel that employees working from home are at a disadvantage. So there's all these contrasts between you should be able to work from home and what people are saying, and then where people think it'll end up, and probably where most of us here. Well, let me ask the question: how many people think that hybrid work, where let's say you're going to the office 2 times a week or 3 times a week, and then you're home a couple times a week, is going to be where we end up? Okay, so pretty much everybody. You didn't raise your hands. How many people think eventually people are just going to all be back at work? Or how many people think that we're just going to be able to be all remote? You do, and you do as well. So even within this group, there's a little bit of difference in terms of where we think we're going to end up. But more stats: 75% of managers want people back and are frustrated. But this is interesting: 60% of U.S. managers believe return is coming soon. 9 out of 10 people who worked remotely during COVID would like to continue to work remotely, and remote workers are tired of hearing from the linoleum lovers when we get back to the office, right? That's a common thing people are saying. It's like, okay, you're remote now, but when we get back to the office, this is going to happen, or that's going to happen. 73% of managers said employee productivity was up or stayed the same, but 69% of managers said they were experiencing burnout with remote work. So that's something I'll talk a little bit about later, but that seems to be a real issue with people. I was talking to this gentleman over here in the back, and he was saying how mental health with kids is a real issue because they've been home. There's a loneliness factor. There's a lack of collaboration. There's a lack of interaction. So, not surprising to you, the number one group that wants to see people back to work are the white men, typically older white men. That this one basically says they're the white dudes in finance, the white dudes in media. Just that in. It's not necessarily, I mean, it's understandable to some that these may be in leadership positions, and that's what they've learned. That's how they've been brought up. And there's just this sense, and being an older white man, I can see the idea of there's just something missing if people aren't in the office, aren't collaborating. What are they doing at home? There's just a lot of thoughts about this. So here's an example. Let's see if it pops up on my. I had it on my phone just because I was reading this article about Goldman Sachs, David Solomon. So he said he wanted everybody back in the office 5 days a week. And just want to find. So basically at the end of that, about 50% of the people actually came back to the office. So then what do you do? Again, it goes back to the employees are in charge in a lot of ways. So they said, all right, well, maybe we'll change that policy. But he believes that there's going to be more interaction, that there's more mentoring, there's more development for people that are back in the office. Now, by contrast, I pulled this article out from Airbnb that said, Airbnb is allowing employees to live and work anywhere in the world. They said they'll still have to come back for meetings periodically, but so you have this contrast of leadership that is in different position. And again, most people are falling in the middle, but there's these extremes that are going on out there as well. So this is where I asked some of the coaches for things, and asked about what are the downsides, what is the belief about downsides for remote working from remotely. Before I say this, I mean, some of the thought is that people have been doing this forever, right? There's some companies that are doing this forever, so there's probably no downside because that's what they're used to. But there's perceptions, and then there's real downside. So this first one is certainly debatable, but some people are saying remote work is unambitious and disengaged, path to burnout, more isolation, less connectivity. So I asked my coaches, I said, what are you hearing? People are missing the hallway conversations. They're missing encounters for ad hoc meetings. They have Zoom fatigue. I can attest to that. How many of you have been on Zoom meetings like one after the other, and you're probably doing something else with your computer, or you're not totally focused on the meeting? There's probably people online doing that now. So, but I'm watching you. I can see some of you. It's a nightmare for extroverts that need that connectivity, and people inside the company get the perks and the promotions. There's some studies that have been done now that said, and it just makes sense, right? If you're in the office next to the boss every day versus working from home, who's going to get the opportunity to interface with them, to connect with them? Who's going to have more opportunity for promotion? The benefits of being for work, this is debatable too, because there's a lot of studies that productivity is just as good, but sense of belonging, certainly. more spontaneous interaction, easier for young people to connect with mentors and coaches. So I met with, I still try to do kind of what I used to do at TAG. If somebody wants to meet with me, I try to find time to do that. And a mom asked me if I could meet with her son who was going through some real stressful times. And he just graduated from UGA and he had a job. He has a job at a big company that you all would know. And he's working from home. He said, I may quit the job because I feel like there's no way to get promoted. There's no way for people to see me. I expected to go into the company and have mentors and be able to interface and show them what I'm doing. And it just doesn't seem to be working out the way that I had hoped. Now, I think he's stuck with the job and he's doing okay, but it was, I'm hearing a lot of that. I think it's most difficult a lot of times for young people that are just graduating and they're expecting to be in an environment of work, even though a lot of their life is through using social media and all. But and there's a lot. The thing I hear number one from the companies we work with is culture. How do you keep a culture where everybody was working together, and how does that happen when people are not connected and not working as teams? I have some thoughts about how you can do that later on, but those are some of the comments I'm hearing. Now, the benefits of working fully remote. I was with the CHRO of a big company that you would know yesterday, and he says, well, think of it like this. And he referenced the mothers. He said, they have their kids, they can take them to school, they don't have to put their makeup on, they get more work, they don't have to drive into work. There's a lot of positives. What's that?
Fathers can do that too.
Well, fathers don't put makeup on though. Well, they might. I'm kidding. I'm kidding with, yeah, dads can do that too, but he was referencing the moms, but for dads too, they can share in the home life more. They figure they get 2 more hours that they can do something because they don't have to drive in and out of Atlanta traffic, all those things. And there are a lot of high paying remote jobs. So this other company that I work with part-time, we do some staffing and recruiting. And there's a company that wanted to recruit someone to Normal, Illinois. I don't know if anybody's been to Normal, Illinois. It's not like the garden spot of the world. It's outside of Chicago. It's near Bloomington, Illinois, which also isn't necessarily the most garden spot in the world. But they were trying to get somebody to work and they couldn't find anybody in a technology job to move to Normal, Illinois to do that work. So they had to open it up to remote work. And it's a Wild West in terms of how much people are hiring and how much they're charging, how much they're paying people now, and how much they're paying to keep people, and what kind of benefits they're throwing at people. And so it's a lot of benefits. You can work anywhere, you save commute time, and certainly there's an employee retention issue. We talked a little bit about this, where we might end up. Most people feel, about 70% of people feel that workforce will be somewhat of a hybrid remote. So I talked to some of my team about what are strategies to connect your team no matter what. And we're doing some of that in our office as well. But doubling down on communication when people are working remote. You always think you're doing enough, but you have to do probably twice as much as you used to do to keep that connectivity. Leverage functional and friendly technology. So those of you that have done the mix of remote and work in the office, that you probably have had to upgrade your technology. It was interesting at Turknett Leadership Group. So I came in as a new CEO. I said, well, this is B office space. I want to move into A office space. This was just before COVID hit. We moved in these beautiful offices with private offices for the coaches, overlooked the lake, and then COVID hit. Nobody comes in the office. So it's like, we pretty much immediately, because we were coaching people different parts of the country that we're no longer going to fly in, and most of the people were in Atlanta. Within a week, we had moved to Zoom, and we basically didn't lose anybody. And the interesting thing for our company is that we actually are now able to coach people all over the world. That if we said we need somebody with, to be coached in Ireland, or we need somebody to be coached even like in California, they said we need to find a coach in that area. But that's totally changed now. So now we are coaching people all over the world. It would never happen before COVID. And it was all because of the technology availability and people being able to embrace and accept. It now seems silly that people were flying in from all over the country to come into our office for a 90-minute meeting and then flying back home, when it's like, okay, now they just get online and they're doing it. I still think there's people feel, and there's probably some truth to the matter of face-to-face interaction is different, and you see maybe more of the body language and all, but the technology is getting better. Build mentoring into coaching. That goes back to the story of the young man I told you about. Performance expectations and measures, and build collaborative game plan. So I talked to one of our coaches about relates to burnout. Say, how do you really help a person that's working from home? And this gets into my people that are PhD psychologists. Establish what you look forward to on your calendar. Focus on what gives you joy, and shop out the rest. Have at least 2 selfish hours a week. Relentlessly guard. Create personal distance from. This is an important one, from your work. I don't know, like how do you feel like you're at work, and how do you feel like you're not at work? So create that personal distance. And then do something that makes someone's day. You may not be having your best day, but you can make someone else's day. So that's some of the, yeah.
On the 2 selfish hours.
Yeah.
Do you mean during the work week?
Yeah, just block out 2 hours during the work week that are yours. That was her suggestion. She's a PhD psychologist, and she said this kind of thing I've seen that's helpful. Just have your own time, have your own space.
Good suggestion.
Yeah. So that's I'm open to questions. That was kind of a quick and dirty, but it gets into really the challenges we have. I think the bottom line is that we're in a bit of a state of flux. There's going to be the hard end leaders that are saying everybody has to be back in the office. It's just a matter of time. And you have the other side that says we're going to get rid of our offices. A lot of people are doing that right now. Be interesting to see how that doesn't seem like it's affecting the retail space right now, but I wonder 5 years from now how it's going to look. But you have that other extreme, and then you have the majority that are trying like 2 days a week in, 3 days a week in. Somebody told me something about there's all kinds of different formulas, like 15 days in and 6 days out, that sort of thing. So what thoughts do you guys have? Yes.
How do you bridge the gap for those companies? Let's take the construction industry, for example. There are certain workers that are home office employees, and then there's the field folks.
Yeah.
The field folks are never going to be able to work remote. How do you bridge that gap and the resentment that they sort of have for each other and being able to work remote?
Yeah, so I guess for the people that may not hear that, how do you bridge the gap between the people that can't work remote, whether they're construction workers, restaurant people that have to, be waiters, doctors and nurses, or I just talked to somebody from I was asking a lot of questions about remote for the last 2 or 3 weeks at least. And, the hospitals, there's a hospital, one of the big hospitals in town said that the administrators are coming back in the office because, the nurses and the doctors have to be in there. And there was some level of resentment about, the administrators can maybe work from anywhere, but the doctors, unless you're into the high technology of doctoring, you're not going to be able to not come in, and the nurses and so on and so forth. So, so the question is, how do you bridge that gap? and I don't know the real answer to that. I think there's got to be a sensitivity to the people that have to work in the office or in construction or whatever. What I would do personally is I feel like it's important to have those people that are have that option to still show empathy and also to be involved where maybe they do come back in the office, at least on a part-time basis. I'm a big one on fairness and having people be able to see, like, real issues that you can make a change, and you make that change, and you're back in the office at some point. So, we even have it in a small office where we have some administrative people that more or less need to be in there. And then we have some people that, like, marketing maybe could be done anywhere, or technology could be done anywhere. And, we're frankly having people come back in the office, and then having some policy that says, if you have we'll call a personal day or a remote day that you need for any of us, we'll do that and we'll support you. That's not a great answer, but I don't think there is a great, anybody else, you're in, some of your others are in that space. Anybody else have another answer to that? Yes.
I think what's happened here is this. The nature of work has been changing for the past 50, 100 years. We came from a time when people just had to go to the plant, they had to go to the factory, they had to go to the office, because that's where the work was performed. As the nature of work changed, the expectations that people had to come in 9 to 5 did not. And so I think what happened is that COVID has shown us that, hey, some jobs don't require you to be at the plant or at the office from 9 to 5. So in a very short period of time, we're having to face that reality. It seems to me that some jobs lend themselves much better than others to remote work. And I think probably what will happen in the future is that as people go out in the job market to find something, they'll be told this job will require you to be in the office 3 days a week or 5 days a week. And then, it's a free market, so I can choose. That's the kind of job I want. That's not the kind of job I want.
Yeah.
So I think we're being forced to look at this reality.
Yeah, I mean, COVID's made a huge difference in that. I do think, right now with the market as tight as it is on related to, being a full employment, basically, that the people that are looking at these jobs can say, I don't want to come in the office at all. And the boss is like, I want you in. There's this whole thing about, like, are you really getting the cultural connection? And maybe over time, I mean, maybe what's happening in some areas is people are not using the workplace as their social connection place. That has to happen, somewhere else outside of that. But you make a good point. Yeah.
So as someone who does hire quite a few people, we've got 150 employees. I think, and we've had them remote for years, as I shared with you.
Yeah.
So we kind of been living this anyway, dealing with the remote workforce. But I think it really goes more, for us right now, is going more to consistency and culture, right? We have our culture set, and if it makes sense, and I think it's kind of like the employee managing the employee, not us mandating, that you can or you can't. Some jobs just are flexible enough to be able to work from home and also come in the office. So that's part of our culture. And we use that, hope to use that to be honest and clear to our employees. This is what you're going to get involved with. But it also means you got to perform, right? So it doesn't matter where your role is in the company. The requirement is on your shoulders, not ours. If it requires you to be here to make sure the project goes right, then you got to be in the office. You decide, not necessarily us decide. Now, we do have some guardrails, and there are some positions that just are required. We're manufacturing, so you got to be in the office. That's consistency, right? So this is what the job requires. If it doesn't meet your need, then this is not the place for you to be here.
Right. Yeah. And to be upfront about all that, I think is is really important as well. And going back to the technology, we've gotten better at that. It's not even just the technology it's there, but it's how to use the technology. I don't know about you, but we used to have these Zoom happy hours. Anybody participate in those? And at the beginning, it was like, what are you drinking? What are you drinking? And that was the extent of like, nobody knew what to do. It was like a Zoom happy hour. Now it's like, there's all kinds of programs like Menti and breakout rooms and things like that. So people have to know how to use all that. We have a program online called Building Leadership Character, was just kind of our base at the Turknett Leadership Group. And we find ways to connect people as partners. So they're going through this journey online together. And it's very interactive. And we just wrapped up one with United Way Worldwide, and they said it was one of the best trainings that they ever went through. But kind of some of the points are being made, it was really up to the employees to make that happen, not the leadership. So I think you had a question then.
Well, more of a comment.
Yeah.
One thing that I've noticed in our organization is that it's about the managers, right? You have to learn a different way of managing when you're remote versus when you are in the office. And I think that when we talk about the burnout from managers, is because they've never transitioned those skills into the remote work environment. They learned how to do it in person. And now that they know how to do it this way, and they're not going to learn how to do it this way. And that's where that burnout is coming. And that's also why the managers are pushing to get everybody back in when it's, people that, like women and minorities in particular that have had to learn how to manage different ways to be effective are actually more effective in the remote management category.
Behind the question.
What's
You
that?
ever read the book Question Behind the Question? Has ever read that? It's basically constantly saying, instead of saying, Tino, why aren't you performing? It's what can I do to help make sure Tino can perform?
Yeah.
And let's face it, every mid-level manager is not made equally, and most of them are really crappy managers.
Yeah.
Which is why there's leadership companies and training companies.
Yeah.
And everything else.
Yeah, thank you for that. I have my business cards. No, we have a program called Manager to Leader, and it's one of our most popular programs right now, because they say we have these people that are great managers. They have no idea how to be leaders, which is a whole different, set of skills. Your point's a really good one. I mean, it's the managers are burning out because they don't know how to, let's say, get the most out of their employees. They don't know how to ask the right questions. They don't know how to engage online. They're used to, face to face, and it's a different world. And some of them aren't going to be able to make that transition or be as good as they were. Some will be better, some will be worse, sort of thing. So did you? Yeah.
I think some of this thing that's been blamed on the hybrid or the remote work environment is really work. Zoom fatigue to me is meeting fatigue. Nobody wants to be in meetings every hour of the day, whether you're in person or online. Some of the burnout that people have from working at home, the loneliness. Nobody cared if you were lonely when you were in the office. Suddenly they're making a whole of it now. So there were plenty of lonely, miserable people who commuted all the time. So it's not like suddenly everybody was happy and now they're unhappy. Mm-hmm. And to Kimberly's point, the remote environment does not favor white men, because it is very performance based. What can you set KPIs? Can you accomplish your goals? It's not so much about that face time, which heavily favors white men. And so the white men who are kind of still in a lot of leadership positions really are like, they don't know how to adjust to that. But a lot of us, we had to figure out how to be seen and heard and recognized and successful. This actually levels the playing field, but it's hard. I think it's hard for people to do a different thing. And instead of saying, this is a different thing, they're blaming the thing instead of their lack of ability to adapt to it.
Right. Well, that's a good point. I do think that as some people have said, different jobs are more conducive to remote work. I mean, almost all technology jobs, you set aside the culture and belonging and loneliness and connecting with your peers, connecting with your boss. You can do most technology jobs remotely. You can do manufacturing job. I mean, you have to do certain jobs in a work environment. You have to be on the site for that sort of thing, at least at this point in time. So, well, I think. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So a lot of time, and first of all, great presentation. A lot of time has been spent on the job. I used to work for Manpower, and one of the things, this was actually well before COVID that I worked for them. And one of the things that we focused on was not necessarily the job itself, it's the person. And there's actually a type of person that works better remotely than others. And so that person typically has had a certain amount of experience in the workforce. They understand that they're self-motivated, they get things done, and those that kind of lie outside of it don't do well. So I haven't heard a lot. I hear an awful lot about can the job be done remotely, and less about can this person, and I've been in sales my whole life, so I've been working from home when people thought it was a vacation, quite honestly. And so, but I had to learn and maneuver how to do it and get things. I always thought it was harder because there was no blueprint. But I was, if you look at the stereotype, I was the type of person who was well suited for that. But just wondering, has there been any studies, or are you considering that when you're defining, rather than is this position, but rather who is better equipped? Like, is this person, do they have the ability to do that?
Yeah, well, in our business, we do every assessment known to man. So I think, that there's some companies do pre-hire assessments. I think more companies should do that, where you sort of figure out what a person's capabilities are, but more what their personality style is. And you're right, some people are much more attuned to working at home and very comfortable with that. And some people, again, maybe it's more extroverts or people that need connection or just feel like they need to be back in that work environment. And then there's realities, right, where you have 3 kids and they're between the ages of 5 and 10, and all the childcare sites are closed down because of COVID. And who's going to stay home? There's studies showing that women have in some ways taken a step back in terms of their opportunity for growth and their opportunity for promotion, because typically, they're the ones that have to stay back and do that, even though it's more shared now. But I think your point's a good one, that there are, every company as they're hiring, if it's a remote work position, if it's an in-office or if it's hybrid, needs to look at the employee that they're hiring to see what their capabilities are and where they're going to be a best fit. And hopefully the employee that's looking at the job also, because sometimes, either if they think coming to the office is going to be fun every day or staying at home is going to be fun every day, they might be, if they don't know themselves very well, they might be surprised that that's not a good fit for them. Like this young man from UGA that was just like, I don't know what, I just can't be doing this at home. I need to be in the office. I need to be meeting people. I need to get my promotions. I need to let them know what I'm doing. So that's a good point. I know we're running out of time, so.
We are getting close on time, so we'll continue this conversation individually. And Dave's got a few closing comments.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Tino. That was a really interesting talk.
Thanks, Tino. Yeah, I figured I'll throw one more comment while I have the mic. And, we're talking about technology change and Zoom and what it did to us. So I'm going to challenge you all to think about what's next. You start to hear a lot about the metaverse and what that represents. But I think as you start thinking about the metaverse and what it's showing you, there will be interactive and personal connections that are going to be made in a virtual world. So that's really going to blow your mind when we go to that level and start actually having to have these conversations all virtually, but all in the same room. Think about that for a while. All right. So I just want to remind a couple of things to our Atlanta folks, and Houston, come on down. We'll invite you there too. But our Capitol Grill is coming up on the 18th. So please come and join us. You can register. I think you've received the email, so please register and come out and join us. I also want to remind you that our August meeting, and yes, I am jumping ahead a couple of months, but this one has purpose. We have the opportunity going back to the Ron Clark Academy. And anybody been there? Was there last year? All right. Well, it's going to be a real treat, and it's going to be another amazing meeting. But it's our opportunity. We can have, virtually a couple hundred people show up out there. So there's very little limitations to us as we head on out and meet with Ron and him to present to us. But this past year, we implemented our CEON Foundation. And as you know, we took students that had gone through the Ron Clark Academy, which is all middle school. We've tracked them through high school, and those high school students have gone on to college. They're the ones that are receiving the scholarships. And you're going to start seeing this posted online. I saw one just go on LinkedIn about hearing some testimonials from these students. This first year has been absolutely phenomenal. These students are phenomenal. I got to tell you, I'm mentoring one of them because part of their scholarship is also requiring a quasi mentor or coach. So we stay in constant contact. Again, these kids, you have no idea the impact that we're making for them. And we are certainly changing their lives. But one beautiful part about it is we're going to get to go there at the source, at the Ron Clark Academy, hear from Ron, who's going to have some amazing conversation for us. And as those of you who have been there before know how great a speaker he is, and a chance to really interact with them and see their environment. So I encourage you to come out, invite anybody you think could take advantage of it. Educators, from the business side, from the entrepreneurship side, it really applies to everybody. So come on out and join us for our April meeting. And remember, our meetings are always the second Thursday of the month. Okay, so it's an easy one to remember and get it on your calendars. All right, with that said, I think we've covered everything. Again, Jim Dupree, thank you for everything. We appreciate it. And check out his website. And to all of our sponsors, thank you very much for all that you do to help us and support us. And until next month, we'll see you then. Take care, everybody.